you for joining us. This is Rawana Mbarak, and I'm the head of Patek Labs and Patek Academy. Today's topic will be about malicious software or malware. If you have any question during this presentation, please send them via chat, and we will have a Q&A session at the end. This webinar will be recorded and available later on YouTube. If you missed any of our recent webinars, you can still find the recording on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to Patek, Path of Technology, to always be updated. I would kindly ask you to mute your microphones, please. Now we can begin. So let's get started. In today's presentation, I'll be covering malware types, malware evolution, state-sponsored attack, malware operation mode, antiviral technique, as well as antiviral techniques, malware analysis, protection tools, and some countermeasures, the latest attack and future prediction, and at the end, I'll be turning to POCs. So the word malware is a contraction of the words malicious and software. Malware is one of the biggest threats on the internet today. Malware is a malicious software that enables unauthorized access to network for purposes of theft, sabotage, or espionage. There are many types of malware, and many attacks use a combination of several types to achieve their goals. Malware is usually introduced into a network through phishing, malicious attachment, or malicious download, but it may gain access through social engineering or flash drives as well. So what are the types of malware? First, we have ransomware. So ransomware is software that uses encryption to disable a target's access to its data until a ransom is paid. The victim is rendered partially or totally unable to operate until it pays. But there is no guarantee that payment will result in the necessary decryption key or that the decryption key provided will function properly. Adware. So adware tracks user surfing's activity to determine which ads to serve them. Although adware is similar to spyware, it doesn't install any software on a user's computer, nor does it capture keystroke. The danger in adware is the erosion of user privacy. The data capture by adware is collected with the data capture covertly about the user's activity elsewhere on the internet and used to create a profile of that person, which include who their friends are, what they have purchased, where they have traveled, and more. So that information can be shared or sold to advertiser without the user's consent. As for worms, worms target vulnerability in operating system to install themselves into network. They may gain access in several ways, through backdoors built into software, through unintentional software vulnerability, or through flash drives. Once in place, worms can be used by malicious actors to launch DDoS attack, steal sensitive data, or conduct ransomware attack. A rootkit is a software that gives malicious actor remote control of a victim's computer with full administrative privilege. Rootkits can be injected into applications, kernels, hypervisor, or firmware. They spread through phishing, malicious attachment, malicious download, and compromised shared drive. So rootkit can also be used to conceal other malware such as keyloggers. Fileless malware. So fileless malware doesn't install anything initially. Instead, it makes changes to files that are native to the operating system, such as PowerShell or WMI. Because the operating system recognizes the edited file as legitimate, a fileless attack is not caught by antivirus software. And because these attacks are stealthy, they are up to 10 times more successful than traditional malware attack. A Trojan disguises itself as desirable code or software. Once downloaded by inspecting user, the Trojan can take control of victim system for malicious purposes. So Trojan may hide in games, apps, or even software patches, or they may be embedded in attachment included in phishing email as well. Spyware collect information about users' activity without their knowledge or consent. This can include passwords, PINs, payment information, or even unstructured messages. So the use of spyware is not limited to the desktop browser. It can also operate in a critical application or on mobile phone as well. Keyloggers. So a keylogger is a type of spyware that monitor user activity. Keylogger have legitimate uses. Businesses can use them to monitor employee activity, and families may use them to keep track of children online behavior. So, however, when installed for malicious purposes, keylogger can be used to steal password data, banking information, and other sensitive information. Keyloggers can be inserted into a system through phishing, social engineering, or malicious download. A virus is a piece of code that inserts itself into an application and executes when the app is run. So once inside a network, a virus may be used to steal sensitive data, launch DDoS attack, or conduct ransomware attacks. Mobile malware threats are as various as those targeting desktop and include Trojans, ransomware, advertising click, fraud, and more. So they are disrupting through phishing and malicious download, and are a particular problem for jailbroken phones, which tend to lack the default protection that were part of those devices' original operation system. Botnets or bots. So a bot is a software application that performs automated tasks on command. So they've used for legitimate purposes such as indexing search engines, but when used for malicious purposes, they take the form of self-propagating malware that can connect back to a central server. So usually, bots are used in large number to create a botnet, which is a network of bots used to launch broad, remotely controlled floods of attack, such as DDoS attacks, botnet, and become quite expensive. For example, the Mirai IoT botnet range from 800,000 to 2.5 million computers. The malware evolution. So in the beginning, in 1982, ELK cloner was written to infect Apple operating system. Attached to a game, it infected the Apple's boot sector and spread by cloning itself to new disk introduced to the system. Once the virus was triggered, it would display a poem explaining how ELK cloning was copying itself throughout the victim's machine and that it wouldn't be easy to reverse its effects. A year after the first personal malware was found in the wild, the term computer virus was coined to refer to a malicious program written to destroy data or to corrupt system. As time moved on, the computer virus branched off into many different categories, as we have seen in the previous slide, and each meant to define how it acts. The 19th. So malware learned the art of evasion, and as a result, antiviruses software become a growing business. By the end of the 1990s, the internet was circling the globe. In fact, 50% of all US homes had computers and internet access, ultimately facilitating the explosion of malware as it is known today. In the early 2000s, more aggressive social engineering strategies came into play. The I love you worm, and also known as love letter, was considered the most damaging worm of its time, infecting millions of computers worldwide merely 15 minutes after it releases. By the mid 2000, there were more than a million known computer worms circulating around the internet. So email spam was becoming big business as malware authors stood to make serious cash by blasting out unsolicited email, spam, and getting just a percentage of users to buy their goods or click on links. And the first malware specially written for Mac OS also entered the scene during this time, causing Mac users to re-evaluate their Macs don't get viruses might send. So other consumer products also become a risk. Also, digital picture frames and hard drive from China began to hit store shelf with malware pre-installed on them. The configure worm made its debut in November 2008, quickly infecting more than 15 million machines worldwide. Researchers theorized that not only was configure as experiment to test out new functionality and spreading capabilities, but that it was also a state-sponsored experiment. So the idea of governments and military using malware as a new weapon was at first only a theory. This changed with Stuxnet in 2010 and the spin-off later that year, including Duku and Flame malware. So the world had proof that state-sponsored attacks were a reality. In 2014, Germany suffered biggest ever data breach in its history. German officials uncovered a large amount of stolen email addresses and passwords. Also, bulleted transactions have been compromised during a 2-year attack. It is estimated that hackers could have stolen up to $3.75 billion. In 2020, so ransomware increased exponentially. The global pandemic prompts a shift in remote working, increasing vulnerabilities, and healthcare facilities are a new target. So cyber warfare is a computer or network-based conflict involving politically motivated attack by a nation state on another nation state. In these types of attack, nation-state actors attempt to disrupt the activity of organization or nation-state, especially for strategic or military purposes and cyber espionage. Cyber warfare can take many forms, including viruses, computer worms, and malware, and they can take down water supplies, transportation system, power grids, critical infrastructure, and military system. They can take the form of DDoS attack. They can use hacking and theft of critical data from institutions, governments, and businesses. Or they can use ransomware that holds computer system hostage until the victims pay a ransom. So a state-sponsored attack usually has one of three objectives: probing for and exploiting national infrastructure vulnerabilities, gathering intelligence, or exploiting money for system and people. One cannot cover all aspects of viruses and worm without considering application designed for military or government purposes. Neither information nor viral code are available to support or to invalidate the fact that military authorities or more generally government officials are involved in the development of computer weapons based on viruses or worm. But most recently, some countries have officially acknowledged the fact that they were developing computer warfare weapons. It's quite obvious that people in charge of national security cannot ignore such opportunity, at least for defensive purposes. So I can cite some of the zero-date exploits here that have done most destructive and high-profile attack in recent years. One of the best known was Operation Aurora. in 2019, it's a campaign who has more than 20 targets, including Google, Yahoo, Symantec, Juniper Networks, and more. The Stuxnet. So in 2010, the Stuxnet worm used at least 3 separate zero-day exploits to damage industrial controllers and disrupt Iran's Natanz uranium enrichment facility. Also, the RSA attack in 2011, attackers breached RSA security division and stole secrets related to its widely used authentication system. The data theft had the potential of rendering the secure ID token authentication system less effective and leaving countless RSA customers less secure. So attackers sent phishing emails with a weaponized Microsoft Excel file labeled recruitment plan to RSA employees. So the file had a malicious Adobe Flash object that exploited a vulnerability, allowing attacker to install the poisoned remote access tool there. So cyber warfare have been defined as action by a nation state to penetrate another nation, but it can be used as well by hacktivists, criminal organization, political and ideological extremist groups as well. Also, to cite some country involved here or governments, we can cite China. So the South Korean government has complained for years of Chinese activity on its official computers, including the compromise of PDAs belonging to government's power structure. North Korea as well. So North Korean defector have described a cyber warfare department of 3,000 personnel, so largely trained in China and Russia. And if I want to say Russia, one of the outstanding questions in cybersecurity today is, where are the Russians? Perhaps they are simply great hackers. Maybe they have sufficient human intelligence. Whatever the reason, cyber defense analysts often look in vain for traces of Russian cyber criminals. As a region in the Middle East here as well, maybe we don't or we may not possess the arsenal of zero-day exploit available in Russia or the brute force number in China, but we have some tactics and techniques used here as well. In 2012, the Mahdi campaign infected targets in the Middle East. They used malicious Word document, PowerPoint files, and PDF to infect targets. Also, I can say Iran, whenever significant activity arrives in the real world, parallel activity unfolds in cyberspace. So it is therefore unsurprising that Iran, which has tense international relations and is one of the verge of acquiring a nuclear bomb, has also experienced the most sophisticated cyber attacks today. In 2012, a hacker group called the Cutting Sword of Justice used the Shamon virus to attack the Saudi Arabian national oil company Aramco. And in 2013, the Wall Street Journal reported that Iranian actors had increased their efforts to compromise US critical infrastructure. Syria also is in the midst of a civil war, so researchers have a lot of cyber activity to analyze here. So the most prominent hacker group by far, the Syrian Electronic Army. The Syrian Electronic Army has hacked Al Jazeera, Anonymous, Telegraph, The Guardian, The New York Times, and more. So now that we have discussed the malware type, their evolution, and why the technology is employed for state-sponsored attack, we will delve into understanding how the technology works in practice. So by looking at antiviral technique and infiltration steps. So malware author usually use several techniques to hide themselves. Some of these techniques include the stealth technique, the ability to deceive any surveillance of the system by reflecting the image of a normal behavior to persuade the absence of an infection. Polymorphism, so it's the ability to modify all or part of its own code to prevent any equivalent pattern. Code rewriting, so the capacity to modify the code into corresponding functions. They can apply as well encryption technique. They can use code armoring. It's a number of mechanisms aiming to interrupt, delay, or avoid the analysis and make the detection burdensome. They can store codes in obscured way to make forensic more challenging. So using obfuscation technique, they can try to disrupt antiviral solution. They can use packing. They can use anti-debugging techniques. So it's a set of many techniques aiming to prevent analysts obtaining context, attaching file, and reversing code, and be able to detect emulation and viral machine execution. They can use steganography as well. So it's the concealment of a viral payload inside another file or images. So the malware lifecycle, usually all these programs spread and operate according to the following way. So the attacker gains entry through an email, a network, file, or application vulnerability. It inserts malware into an organization network. Then this advanced malware probes for additional network access and vulnerabilities, or communicate with command and control server to receive additional instruction or malicious code. The malware collects data on a staging server, then exfiltrate the data of the network, and it will typically establishes additional point of compromise and spread laterally. So usually 7 steps are involved in the targeted attack. So first, the hacker will begin by leveraging social engineering to find any individual or group at the targeted organization. So he sizes up the organization. Once the attacker have determined who within an organization is the desired target, they leverage a variety of hacking tools to install malware and take control of the user machine. And using the credential that were obtained by a compromised insider, cybercriminal will log into the network and begin pillaging through company's data. And step 4, he tried to solidify his presence. So at this stage, in a target attack, the attacker steals additional username and password, and he will try as well to escalate the privilege in as a step 5. So he can become now like a powerful user. In step 6, he steals confidential data. The hacker now have an established presence in the organization system and can steal the sensitive information they have found. In step 5, step 7, he covers tracks and prepare for return visit. So once the sensitive data has been taken, the attacker will attempt to hide any evidence of the invasion. They may delete the account that were created, delete the log records of their present, or reset registry settings. So the hackers will also return escalated permissions back to a normal state to reduce the chance that their presence is detected. So it's common, however, it's common to keep one or more accounts escalated but inactive. So in order to return and perform additional reconnaissance at a later time. So as with almost all technology, when a malicious tool is created, countermeasures are also invented. So in the next section, we will uncover countermeasure and protection tools, antiviral technique, and malware analysis. So one of the most ingenious delivery method for malware today is by exploit kit. And here are some ways you can protect against exploit and shield your vulnerabilities. First, update your operating system, browser, and plugins. If there is an update to your computer waiting in queue, don't let it linger. Update the operating system, the browser, and plugins are often released to patch any security vulnerabilities discovered. So while you leave those programs alone, cybercriminals can find their way in through these vulnerabilities. To protect against security flaws in mobile phone, be sure your mobile phone software is updated regularly. Don't ignore those new software update pop-ups. Enable click-to-play plugins. So one of the most devious way that the exploit kit are delivered to your computer is through malvertisement or malicious ad. Click-to-play plugins keep Flash or Java from running unless you specifically tell them to do so. Remove software you don't use. So using them without support or the ability to patch will leave you wide open to exploit attack. Take a look at your programs such as Adobe Reader or older version of Media Player. If you are not using them, best to remove them. Watch out for social engineering. So another top method for infection is to scam user through social engineering, whether that's an email that looks like it's coming from your bank, a tech support scam, or a fishy social media campaign. So read email with an eagle eye. Check the sender's address. Is it from the actual company he or she claims? Hover over links provided in the body of the email. Is the URL legitimate? Read the language of the email carefully. So are there weird line breaks, awkwardly constructed sentence? Cyber criminal love also spoofing banks via SMS or text messages or fake bank apps. So do not confirm any personal data via text. Better is to call the contact directly. Do not call fake tech support number. Do not believe the cold callers. Practice safe browsing as well. So use a strong password, and a strong password is unique, so it is not written down anywhere, is changed often, and isn't tied to easily found personal information like a birthday. It's also not repeated for different log, and if you don't want to worry about remembering 5,608 different rotating password, you may want to look into a password manager, for example, which collects, remember, and encrypts the password for your computer. Make sure you're on a secure connection. So look for the proper padlock icon in the left of the URL. It's there, then if it is there, then that means that the information passed between a website server and your browser remains private. So the URL should read HTTPS and not just HTTP. Log out of website after you're done and layer your security. So after all the safe browsing and careful vigilance in the words cannot protect you from all the threats out there. So to keep your machine clean, invest in security software and layer it up with the following. Use firewall, anti-malware, anti-ransomware, and anti-exploit technology. So your firewall cannot detect and block some of the known bad guys. Use multiple layers of tech to fend off sophisticated attacks from unknown agent. So security professionals agree on a multi-layer approach. Using not only multi-layer for security technology, but also user awareness helps you keep protected from the bad guys and your own mistakes as well. So now go forth and fight malware. So usually all this antiviral tool will be using some of these three techniques or methods. First, they can rely on the use of static antiviral technique. So this technique examines the code without execution. They can rely on viral signature. They look for an arrangement of bits and instruction. On spectral analysis, with this technique consists in examining the code function and instruction. Or heuristic analysis, this technique studies the performance and the behavior of a particular program based on policies and guidelines. Other tool may rely on dynamic antiviral techniques. So this technique execute the code for analysis. They can use behavior monitoring or code emulation. So this technique loads the program into a specific memory zone to mimic the code execution. And the third technique is the file integrity checking. This technique check any modification in critical files. So most efficient antiviral solution are combining the three or several different antiviral techniques together to fight against malware. A layered approach is the typical considered strategy. Most vendor funnel out suspect file as they move through the stack, reducing the number of files requiring sandbox analysis. A mix of signature, reputation, real-time emulation, and the heuristics enhance protection and identify advanced malware. Moreover, many security solutions have expanded deployment option with virtual and cloud-based offering. So antiviral solution start to stop known threat, then adds the next layer of defense using machine learning to detect advanced malware with both statistical analysis and behavior analysis. Static analysis quickly compares features against those of known threats. If the file cannot be confidently convicted, it will be executed for further behavior analysis, limiting the grayware and blocking suspicious activity. Finally, convictions and IOCs are shared for enhanced protection. So when you say also malware analysis, it is also divided into several techniques. So to analyze malware, the first technique used is the static method or the disassembly, the reverse, also known as reverse engineering. It analyzes the malware code by decompiling it. So the static method consists of opening an executable file with tools such as IDA Pro in order to find and analyze the assembly code corresponding to the binary content of the file. So by analyzing the code, it is possible to study the behavior of each part of the program and to deduce its functionality. So this kind of analysis can confirm whether a file is malicious, provide information about its functionality, and can also be used to produce a simple set of signatures. So the most common static analysis approach used, we can finding a sequence or character of string, gathering the linked libraries and function of an executable, as well as the metadata, analyze portable executable files header and section. We can search for packed or encrypted code. For the dynamic analysis technique, also known as behavior analysis, so it involves executing malware in a controlled environment to observe its action and infer its functionalities. The advantages over the static method, it is much faster. In a few minutes, it's possible to get an over require knowledge of assembly or programming, and it is not sensitive to malware protection technique. Analysis involve executing the program and monitoring its behavior on the. So this is typically performed when static analysis has reached a dead end, either due to obfuscation or on having exhausted the available static analysis technique resources. So unlike static analysis, it traces the real action executed by the program. However, the analysis must be run in a safe environment to not expose the system to unnecessarily risk, where the system is both the machine running the analysis and the rest of the machines on the network. So to this end, maybe dedicated physical or virtual machine are set up. Also, there are several all-in-one software products based on sandbox technology that can be used to perform basic dynamic analysis. The most well-known is the Cuckoo Sandbox, an open-source automated malware analysis system. So this modular sandbox provides capability to trace API call, analyze network traffic, or perform memory analysis. Alternatively, there is a wide list of utilities for dynamically analyzing malware and perform advanced and specific monitoring of some functionality, like Process Monitor is a tool for Windows that monitors certain registry, file system, network, process, and thread activity. Process Explorer shows the information about which handles and DLL processes are opened or loaded into the operating system. Regshot is a registry comparing utility that allows a snapshot of registries to be taken and compared. And recently, a new technique has been added. So using machine learning techniques. So the pledge of machine learning is in detecting malware consists in apprehending the feature of this malicious software to be able to differentiate between good and bad binaries. Over the past decade, there has been an increase in the research and deployment of machine learning solution to tackle the task of malware detection and classification. So what are some of the latest malware tactics and technique? This will inform us on the challenges ahead and inform us of the best way to employ effective countermeasures. So some of the malware tactics and techniques involve drive-by compromise. The attackers gain access to a system by infecting malicious code, exploiting public-facing application, for example, databases, SQL, or standard services like SMB or SSH. Use external remote services so they can try to get initial access or persist within a network using remote services such as VPNs. They can use phishing or spare phishing attachments. So attacker may send spare phishing emails with a malicious attachment in an attempt to gain access to a victim system. They can obtain or abuse credential of existing account as a mean of gaining initial access, persistence, or privilege escalation. They can use masquerading. So the attacker may attempt to manipulate feature of their artifacts to make them appear legitimate or benign to user or to the security tools. They can exploit remote desktop. RDP, remote desktop, is a common feature in operating system. So they can log into an interactive session with a system desktop graphical user interface on remote system, and they can through them to perform their attack. Exfiltration. So usually they will try to exfiltrate data and to steal information and to encrypt data encrypted for impact. So they can use this to stored inaccessible by encrypting files or data on local or remote drive. In case of ransomware, it's typically that common user files like Office documents, PDF, images, source code file will be encrypted. In other cases, the attacker may encrypt critical system files or even disk partition or the boot sector. It depends on the attack. So some of the notable attack in 2020, I can cite the SolarWinds Sunburst attack. So the attack exploited trusted third-party software. The hacker gained access by slipping their malware into software updates of SolarWinds Orion software, which is widely used to manage large organizational network. The Sunburst attack relied on a trusted relationship between the targeted organization and SolarWinds. So beginning as early as March last year, SolarWinds unwittingly sent out software update to its customer that included the hacked code. So the code created a backdoor to customers' information technology system, which hacker then used to install even more malware. And as coronavirus's case surge, so do cyber attacks against the healthcare sector. So new statistics show a 45% increase in cyber attacks since November against the global healthcare sector. According to the researcher, attack vector employed by threat actors are wide-ranging, including DDoS attacks, social engineering, botnet, phishing, and ransomware. Also, the Baltimore school ransomware attack. So 2 days after Thanksgiving, the Baltimore County public school system was shut down, leaving 115,000 students without access to their online classes. So the district email system, website, and grading system were all impacted. 2021 prediction. So APT threat actors will buy initial network access from cybercriminal. More countries using legal indictment as part of their cyber strategy. Increased targeting of network appliance. Actors will focus more on exploiting vulnerabilities in network appliances such as VPN gateways. We have also seen ransomware gangs seeking to obtain greater leverage by threatening to publish stolen data if a company fails to pay the ransom demanded by the attackers. So this trend is likely to develop further as ransomware gangs seeks to maximize their return on investment. The increase of targeting of IoT devices. So IoT security breaches have been dominating the headlines and are set to increase as more devices are connected, putting protection at the core of the technology's agenda. Attackers will continue to exploit the COVID-19 pandemic and the immersion of 5G vulnerability. So 5G attracted a lot of attention this year in many countries, and there are also numerous scary stories about possible health risk as well. The cost of ransomware attacks, so damage cost from ransomware attacks is increasing rapidly in the upcoming years. This shows the need to provide awareness to the researcher and practitioners about the severity of this attack, how it works, what are the possible remedies in case of if any organization or individual becomes the target of ransomware attack, what should they do? So that's all for the prediction. And now that we have looked at the different malware type, their properties and characteristic, antiviral techniques and countermeasure, as usual, we'll be turning to POCs. So first POC, The objective of this POC is to break into the Windows Server machine and to try to get access with the admin privilege if possible. So in the first step, the reconnaissance phase, we will attempt to gather as much information as possible about the targets while minimizing the probability of being detected. Some techniques we can use to undergo this inspection, we can just use the terminal using ifconfig command, then map the ping scan to get the network distance. We can use netstat to display the network summary. And at the end of the reconnaissance phase, we should have a large amount of information about the target's digital and physical habits and defenses. So this phase also includes active information gathering, technique like network scanning and enumeration. So here we run a vulnerability scanning tool using Sparta tool, and we downloaded Nessus for a detailed vulnerability assessment scan to check what are the vulnerability existent. And in the gaining access phase, we take advantage of the vulnerabilities identified in the previous phase in order to bypass or overcome the organization defenses. So the end goal of this phase is to provide a foothold inside the target defense that can be expanded to achieve the objective of the assessment. So after exploiting and gaining access to a victim system, the next step is to get its administrator rights or root permission. So once the privilege is granted, then it becomes very simple to install, delete, or edit any file or process. So here we used the Eternal Blue exploit using Meterpreter, and to carry on the same scenario where the Windows server has been hacked, we have put the payload Meterpreter that uses and then use the get system command to escalate privilege. Using get system will get us escalated privilege, and then we can carry on to do whatever we want in the system. In the second POC, this POC tackles the machine learning malware detector. So we tackle the detection part using machine learning. So the idea is to detect malware using a machine learning algorithm. The detector leverages the random forest algorithm. As we can see here, the algorithm will scan a file to determine if it is malicious or benign. We should provide the detector with the file path. If the result probability is higher than 50%, then it is most probably malicious, else it is benign. So we run two scans. The first file is benign with a probability of 28%. And the second file is malicious with a probability of 62%. To conclude, malware remains one of the biggest, if not the biggest threat in cyberspace. Malware analysis, antiviral technique, countermeasures, and tools remain vital for the health of information system and the safety of person and data. And that's the references of this presentation. And that's all for today. Any question? So do you have any question? It looks like we have answered all of your questions.
No question from my side, but I don't see the other participants anymore.
Okay.
I don't know if something.
Hi, Joanna.
Hello.
Kifi.
Alhamdulillah.
I don't have any questions. It's interesting. The presentation was interesting. We hope to see more of such kind of presentations. Thank you.
Thanks for you. Yes, we will be doing lots of presentation from this kind. Also, as I said in the beginning, we have already done some webinars. They are available now on YouTube. You can subscribe to Potek YouTube channel, Potek-Path of Technology. All the recordings are available there.
Okay, great. We'll do this. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks you all for your participation.
Joanna?
Yes.
Are you going to share the presentation with us?
Usually I share the recording. Do you want the slides, you mean?
Yes, if it's possible.
Yes, why not? I can share it with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
بجوابة privacy.
In fact, I'm having some connection problem and
ما بدي
I
حد
can't,
شيء هيك كثير هالقد برايفت عني ليك خليني
I can't see the chat. Any other question?
Thank you, Joanna. It was very interesting.
Okay, great.
Okay, Joanna, Tony.
Yes.
From my side as well, I want to thank everybody for attending, and the people who wants the presentation, please send us an email, and we will send it back to you for sure. And definitely, as Joanna told you, we are preparing for a lot of other interesting subjects that will be presented and available later on YouTube as well. Thank you all.
Thank you all. We hope to see you again next time. Stay safe.
Stay safe.
Thank you. Bye bye.